My name is Sharon Sinclair, and I am the Grey Highlands Poet Laureate 2017 for Canada 150. I was born right here in Flesherton at the home of Mrs. Noon, and I grew up in Ceylon at a mink farm. Went to school in Ceylon, one of those one-room schools that are just amazing, part of our rural heritage, and attended high school at Flesherton District High School, and also was in the first class graduating from Grey Highlands Secondary School. So my roots run really deep here, and my affection for this place as well. Like many people, I left to go to university and pursue careers outside of this area of Grey Highlands, but also like many people, I have come back to my roots. I lived in Kimberley for 17 years, and while I was there, it really helped me to rekindle my lifelong identity as a poet. Being the Poet Laureate has been an amazing experience for me. I thought maybe I could help you to really see the extent of this role if I read you a poem that I had composed for this grand finale gala celebration that we all enjoyed in November. So I'm just going to read it to you. It's called Sailing into the Future. This is the year my ship came in, laden with tales of where it's been, when pleasures of life seemed all too slim. But this is the year my ship came in. At the Mayor's New Year's levee, I helped cut the cake to usher in a year where each community made a tribute to Canada for the benefits bestowed that make our Grey Highlands such a wonderful home. My ship ceremoniously docked on an April night at the Flesherton Library, where to my delight 17 fine poets and 3 musicians appeared in a salute to the laureate that moved me to tears. The medallion presented by Paul McQueen is a symbol I'll cherish in days unforeseen as I look back with fondness at the year gone by and all the fresh challenges I willingly tried. Like a program presented to eager young souls at the Walter Harris Memorial Library, as my story unfolds with the Precious Gems Club, where poetic thoughts flowered and where preschoolers learned about the alphabet's power. At the Friends of the Library Spring Cafe, a warm welcome was extended to Charlotte Gray, who made the promise of Canada come alive, rekindling a patriotic spirit inside, mixed with awareness of the compelling proof that we must work together for reconciliation and truth. There were speaking engagements where new poems appeared at the Friends of the Museum's events through the year, like the evening in Kimberley, where the view took our breath, as a researcher discussed theories of Tom Thompson's death. The celebration for Agnes Campbell MacPhail was an evening when musical talent prevailed, and I shared my poem with a room full of folks who listened intently when Agnes spoke. Another captivating event showed the impressive extent to which artistic expression has brilliantly lent an identity to Canada's canvas, radiant like gold, revealed by Douglas Gibson in the tales he told. Old Home Weekend in Osprey and Amazing Race Rockland, the Terry Fox Walk in Badgerose, Eugenia's Gold Rush Days, agricultural fairs, Priceville's fireworks too, all told me our municipality is richly imbued with a vibrance that reflects generations of care for the people who live here and for the land that we share. Quilts for the barn and quilts for the bed, wall hangings, photography, and paintings declared that our local talent is diverse and rare, like the community choirs whose beautiful sound praise God for the blessings Grey Highlands has found. At the Buckingham Church and the Maxwell Hall, I participated with gratitude in a memorial call to recognize the importance of our ancestors' graves and to honor their memory in significant ways. With a Remembrance Day poem about Vimy Ridge grief, I spoke at a cenotaph where an offering of wreaths showed our respect for the sacrifices made that we may know freedom and live unafraid. In a newspaper column in the early weeks, I introduced a concept to have residents speak through an anthology, a Canada 150 plan, paying tribute to others who've helped us expand our confidence and follow our dreams through their actions, their support, and their inspiring schemes. Grey with a Silver Lining is the legacy I leave, written with collaboration and the strong belief that there were stories out there about gratitude that lasts. Our book's a gift to the future from Grey Highlands past. These events I've recalled are only a few of the opportunities presented to my laureate's view. I thank each community for the pleasures I've found as I attended your events and walked on your ground. My once-in-a-lifetime role will soon come to an end, and I'm grateful for acquaintances who've now become friends. Thank you for allowing me to play a part in a memorable year I'll keep close to my heart. May every year be a time when your dreams will come true, when your ship will come in, bringing wonderful views. May your passage be safe as you journey along, and may life treat you gently, like a beautiful song. There were so many highlights during this year that it's almost difficult to encapsulate this year for me, but there were some wonderful discoveries, and probably 3 of them I would really like to mention to you. And one is that I was just completely impressed with the quality of the talent in this area. Since my background is poetry, it was a beautiful thing to discover that this area is just brimming with talent in this whole dimension of poetry. It makes me think that poetry is like a multi-lane highway, and there are so many approaches to it as there are to any art form. But with poetry, it's like you can have a lane where you feel most comfortable, and you can feel free to change lanes as you expand your own development with the art form. I know for myself, there's definitely a lane of inspirational writing, which I've been involved with for a number of years. But when I meet these other poets who have so many other approaches to poetry, it's very exciting, and it challenges me also to expand my own style. But probably I will always be a lyrical poet, because that's just more intrinsic to who I am. I'm not so much a performance artist or a slam poet, although I do really appreciate and value the skills that are needed to perform that way. So meeting the other poets was fantastic. Poet Daniel Kolosh has a poetry salon and a music salon that he does bi-monthly, and so I've become involved with the poets in that area as well. And another area where I was pleasantly, not really even surprised, but just a confirmation of how much our municipal staff does, and the councillors, that I think they don't get enough credit for. Because every event that I turned up at, there were easily 3 or 4 councillors there to show their support. And the time that takes, and the commitment beyond the office hours or meetings or anything like that, is really to be commended. I thought that was really fantastic. And also just an awareness of the spirit of volunteerism in this area as well. It was amazing for me to see all of the people who made this year happen so beautifully, and often they go unrecognized as well, and they're the heartbeat really of this whole municipality. So I would just like to personally thank those volunteers, because they were out in droves this year, and I suspect every year, just to celebrate and to make the community a very vibrant and welcoming place to live. Grey with a Silver Lining is an accomplishment of a collaborative effort. With the appointment of a Poet Laureate, there is the expectation of what's called a legacy project, and it should be unique to the individual. So I considered that for a while, and I thought some of the concepts that can't say they're really unique to me, but I stand by them, so I guess that makes it very personal to me, is the thought that it's very important to follow your dreams, to never give up on your dreams. And it's also very important to thank people who have helped you along the way. So I put those 2 ideas together and thought, why can't we do a book kind of like the Chicken Soup from the Soul, for the Soul series, where people write in their stories and they're published and edited. And I thought that would make a great project for us for this year of recognizing our history, recognizing the strengths of the community, and what we're grateful for. So I put out a call for stories, as I'll just read the back here because it'll help you maybe to understand it. The book you are holding is the fulfillment of the legacy project associated with the municipality's first Poet Laureate. The anthology represents the collaborative effort of many people who believe in the power of following our dreams and the importance of expressing gratitude for the inspiration we receive along the way. And I hope that people will find these wonderful, heartfelt tributes to local people, places, and things that have improved the quality of our lives. I hope that people will find them to be really interesting reading, and that they will also encourage them to reflect in their own lives upon the influences that have really helped them along the way, and to, in their own way, express gratitude to the people, places, and things that have shaped their lives. So we got even more response than we anticipated. 122 people sent in stories. Some included more than one tribute, which was just fine because we wanted to have as many as possible. Even so, this just skims the surface. It's just a tiny representation of all the inspiring forces that are out there for us. But it might help people to really reflect on their own sources. I wanted poetry as well as prose, so we have some wonderful, wonderful entries here. We had a contest to name the book, and the contest winner had submitted a title that her uncle would have used on his memoirs. But unfortunately, he passed away before his memoirs were written. His name was Harold Turner, and he had a title, though, which would have been Grey with a Silver Lining, and it just seemed so appropriate. So we have him to thank for that, and his story is in the book, first story of the book. And also, I just thought that maybe you might like to hear one of the poems that were in this book. These stories are so precious to me, each one of them. But this one, for some reason, really tugged my heartstrings because it was written by someone who died in the 1950s. His name was Howard Graham, and he was a very prominent man in the Vandeleur area, and much broader too with his influence. And I thought that he wrote in a very beautiful rhythm, and that people could identify with the history of the whole area. It refers to Artemisia, but the history would apply to many of the townships at that time. So I'm going to read it to you. It's called 100 Years Ago. And I'm very grateful to Ruth Graham, Howard's daughter, for bringing me some poetry that her father had composed, a whole book of poetry. And from that I selected this one. I've often heard my father tell of things that used to be, when Artemisia was a bush and land was given free. It seems to me that things were tough and times were rather slow when father was a little lad 100 years ago. No autos ran upon the roads. In fact, few roads were known. The binder wasn't heard of then, nor was the telephone. The sickle was the only thing with which to reap and mow when Artemisia was a bush 100 years ago. No modern implements they had with which to till the land. They plowed the stubble with a spade and sowed it in by hand. And many were the fields of wheat put in with rake and hoe when father was a little lad 100 years ago. I've listened to my father tell how on a winter's day he'd taken loads to Collingwood with oxen and a sleigh. They didn't get the markets then by mail and radio. They often had to trust to luck 100 years ago. And many were the bags of wheat, I've often heard him say, men carried to the flour mill a dozen miles away. Their clothing then was made at home. 'Twas knit and spin and sew when father was a little lad 100 years ago. Their larder then was rather plain, no raisins, coffee, tea. Some called it Artemisia then, some art o' misery. But still they always had enough of homely fare, and so they thanked the great provider much 100 years ago. We people of the modern age have much that life can give. We little lack of anything except the time to live. It's always rush and worry now. We're always on the go. We may be losing much they had 100 years ago. A happy, free, and useful life is the Creator's plan. Our systems and inventions all must serve, not shackle man. And so they will, I've not a doubt. Someday the world will show a better life from hopes that grew 100 years ago. By Howard I. Graham. So, his entry is one in this book. Just love the beautiful photograph that was provided by Arts on 10. Holger Majoran and Jennifer Stenberg worked on that, and it seemed to really encapsulate how the light gets in, and that I think people will resonate with the idea of the barn, and the real heritage from which we come. One of the wonderful things that happened through the creation of this book is that we discovered Keeling's Design and Print in Owen Sound, and they worked with us so harmoniously to create this book. I can't recommend them highly enough. Wilda Allen and I worked really closely with them, and it was a very heartwarming experience. And we had researched some other printers, but I think for me what made the difference is that Carolyn, who is the owner of that company, said, "We would be honored to print this book." And she really meant it, and that came through. So this book was created with great love, and I really hope that a lot of people will buy this book and really cherish it for years to come. And I might leave you with just one section of my Canada Day poem. It's toward the end of the book here. And I had an opportunity to share this at a few places this year. And again, it just hopefully summarizes some of the ideas that I have about Canada and how very fortunate we are to live in this country. There's so much beauty in Canada, it takes your breath away. But every gift of greatness has a price we all must pay. For the Indigenous peoples who first walked upon this land, a true partnership is needed in every future plan. Truth and reconciliation must shape the sharing of this land as we honor our diversity and pledge to take a stand, to be on guard for all Canadians, to ensure in future years that we have earned each privilege bought by toil and tears. Our world will face uncertain times. There are no guarantees. But a country's greatest strength lies in its unity. So now let's pay it forward and strive to do our best, to share with grateful hearts the gifts with which we're blessed. This year is a time to celebrate, reflect on victories won, and pray that fortune's favors may belong to everyone. Let's search for similarities when differences abound, and raise one voice in unison to thank this sacred ground. Then sing with joy, O Canada, and may it ever be. This land is your land. This land is my land. And we're the true North, strong and free. Sometimes people will ask me, well, what do you do from here, And two of the friends of the museum, Barry Penhall and Jane Gibson, I had lunch with them recently, and they said, well, Sharon, if people didn't know before who you were, they know who you are now. And I hope that just that high profile will open some doors for me to do some creative things in the community, and also just to advance my own livelihood as a poet, because as any art form, it's challenging in that direction. So I'm very eager to see what comes from this. What I will be working on imminently is the creation of more CDs. This was a CD that was created from work that I had done as a teacher when I worked not preschool, but kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2 in Rexdale. And this is, I alluded to it in the poem also. I had a chance to work with some children in the area about just learning to read and all of the exciting things that can happen when you have the sound symbol correspondence. in an innovative and I think pretty interesting way. I taught a lot of children to read and write using my system of Alphabet Alley. So I hope for great things for this, because I think there's a market out there for it. These are the CDs that are probably most dear to my heart, because they represent my thoughts on a number of issues and my emotions, my feelings. I'm going to be this was the very first one I created, actually, Water from the Moon, and there was a little booklet that went with that. It's out of print now, but I don't plan to really print this anymore, because I'm working on a book that will incorporate some of this poetry as well as some newer poetry. This is a CD that's very dear to my heart, and is one in a series of ongoing chronicles of the Carpe Diem concept, to seize the day. So this one was inspired at Fairhope, Alabama. The one I'm working on now will be called Rising from the Falls, and the inspiration for that is a lot of the waterfalls that we have right here in Grey County, and that'll be an extenuation. This is book 1, and Rising from the Falls will be book 2, and I see an ongoing series of these as my enlightenment increases, hopefully, as a poet and as a human being. So if nothing else in my life I'm remembered for, I would want it to be this. And I think that's an important concept about legacy, that we all want to leave the world better maybe than how we found it. And because I don't have my own children, I'm very encouraged by a comment that Pauline Johnson, our early Canadian pioneer poet, wrote, and she said that poems are the children of our imagination. So my legacy will be left through my imagination and through some of the concepts that have become important to me in terms of living in harmony with the universe. And so I hope people will become aware of these now, because I do have a website. It's called poetryspeaker.com, and they can be ordered through there, or you can contact me there for speaking engagements. I really enjoy being involved in that kind of thing. So I look forward to the future, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity I've had this year.